For centuries, we looked at the Amazon and saw one thing: wilderness. Pure, untouched, and indifferent to us. 6 million square kilometers of green so dense, so unrelenting, that the idea of anything being hidden inside it felt almost laughable. But what if everything we believed about this place was wrong? What if the rainforest you're imagining right now, that cathedral of ancient trees, that tangle of vines, that explosion of life, was not simply grown by nature but built by people, not metaphorically, literally engineered, cultivated, and managed across thousands of years by civilizations so advanced we are only now beginning to understand what they actually made? Hidden beneath the canopy lies a different Amazon, one with cities, farms, and a story of human ingenuity so extraordinary it rewrites almost everything we thought we knew. The reason we never found it: we weren't looking with the right eyes. Let's start with a legend. Because this story of rediscovery doesn't begin with satellites or research papers. It begins with gold. For centuries, the idea of a city of incalculable wealth somewhere deep in South America drove explorers to the edge of obsession. They called it El Dorado, the Golden One. In 1542, a Spanish conquistador named Francisco de Orellana journeyed down the length of Amazon River and claimed to have seen something astonishing: dense settlements along the banks, cultivated fields, organized communities, a living civilization carved into the jungle. When later expeditions followed his route, they found nothing. Just forest. Just silence. The scientific consensus hardened. Orellana was a dreamer. The Amazon was too hostile, its soils too poor, to have ever supported large human populations. That consensus outlasted even Percy Fawcett, the obsessive British explorer who mounted expedition after expedition searching for a lost city he called simply Z. In 1925, he walked into the jungle one final time and was never seen again. For decades, his story was treated as a cautionary tale. The science was settled. But here's the thing about settled science. Sometimes it's the tool that's wrong, not the theory. Sometimes the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It is simply evidence of limitation. What Orellana saw was real. What Fawcett was looking for was real. They were simply using the wrong instruments. The tool that changed everything is called LiDAR, light detection and ranging. Laser pulses fired from aircraft, bouncing off the ground and returning to a sensor. Measure the time, apply the mathematics, and you generate a precise three-dimensional map of whatever lies beneath. Some of those pulses slip between the leaves, reach the bare earth, and come back. Strip the forest from the data digitally, and what remains is the ground itself, honest, unfiltered, exposed. And the ground beneath the Amazon is not just earth. It is full of shapes, straight lines, perfect angles, geometry, the things nature doesn't make. In 2022, archaeologist Heiko Prumers used LiDAR to scan a region of Bolivia called the Llanos de Mozos, heartland of the Casarabe culture, which flourished between 500 and 1400 CE. What the data revealed was staggering. Not scattered villages, but a system. 2 massive anchor sites connected by straight causeways stretching for kilometers. Canals, reservoirs, pyramid-like mounds. A fully planned urban landscape, sustained for nearly 1,000 years. Then in 2024, a study from Ecuador's Upano Valley confirmed it wasn't isolated. Within just 300 square kilometers, researchers found over 6 zero-Z human-made earthen platforms connected by roads 13 meters wide, surrounded by agricultural fields. A metropolis occupied from as early as 500 BCE, home to somewhere between 10,000 and 30,000 people. And when researcher Vinicius Parapato applied LiDAR analysis across a broader slice of the basin, scanning just 0.08% of the total Amazon, he found 24 previously undetected earthworks hidden under closed canopy. Scale those numbers to the rest of the unscanned forest, and models suggest between 10,000 and 23,000 large-scale earthworks may still be buried beneath the trees. That number doesn't revise the old story. It ends it entirely. And it raises an uncomfortable question for every textbook that ever described the Amazon as primeval. Empty wilderness. How did we get this so wrong for so long? But cities require food, and here the old consensus runs into a wall it cannot climb. Amazon soils are notoriously poor. Nutrients cycle through the living biomass above ground, not the earth below. This was the logic that made ancient Amazonian cities seem impossible. You cannot feed a metropolis on soil that barely supports a garden. Except the ancient Amazonians didn't use natural soil, they made their own. Scattered across the basin, archaeologists have found patches of extraordinary dark, dense, carbon-rich earth, unlike anything that forms naturally in the region. It is called Terra Preta, dark earth, and it was manufactured by layering organic waste, spreading charcoal and ash through fields, and building slow decomposing compost deposits over time. Ancient communities transformed infertile jungle floor into remarkably productive agricultural land. Indigenous communities like the Kwikuro still use versions of this method today. But Terra Preta does something else, something the people who created it almost certainly never intended. It locks carbon into the ground for centuries, possibly millennia. Ancient farmers, managing their land to survive, accidentally built one of the most efficient long-term carbon sequestration systems ever documented. The Amazon was not a wilderness that humanity tried and failed to inhabit. It was a landscape that humanity transformed, and that still carries the imprint of those choices today. And yet the Amazon is not only a place of buried history. 1 in 10 of all known species on Earth lives here, and new ones are still being found. A WF survey documented 441 new species in just 4 years. In 2024 alone, researchers described new marsupials, unknown amphibians, and a species of giant snake so genetically distinct it required its own classification. The frontier here is not closing, it is widening. The tool accelerating that process is environmental DNA, eDNA. Every creature sheds genetic material constantly, into the water, carried downstream. A single river sample, filtered and sequenced, contains the biological signatures of every animal that has passed through that stretch of water. A team led by ecologist Caitlin Ramosa used this method to track Amazonian manatees, animals known to inhabit the river system but nearly impossible to observe directly in its murky waters. Over 13 days, filtering samples across the central Amazon, the team recovered manatee DNA at multiple locations, no cameras, no traps, just water, a filter and a sequencer. It turns the entire river system into a biological archive that anyone with the right equipment can now read. What took decades of difficult fieldwork can now begin with a bucket of river water. The Amazon is still giving up its secrets. It just needed us to ask the right way. So here is what the Amazon actually is. Not an untouched wilderness, but a landscape layered with human memory. Cities that predate the Roman Republic, roads engineered across seasonal floodplains, soil made by hand that outlasted the civilizations that made it, a forest whose very species composition reflects choices made 2,000 years ago, and a river that carries the genetic signatures of creatures we have yet to name. The real El Dorado was never a city of gold. It was this: the understanding that a civilization can be so deeply woven into its landscape that when it ends, the landscape itself becomes its monument. That the forest is the city, that the soil is the history. And if that is true of what we have already found, then what still waits beneath the remaining 99.92% of this unscanned, unread, extraordinary place? Leave your answer in the comments. I genuinely don't think any of us can fully imagine it yet.